good evening, family. How is everybody doing? We hope that you're having a good week so far, and we're really thankful that you are going to be joining us or is joining us this evening on Family Talk Live with the Dukies. I'm Sanya Duki, your mental health therapist and Christian parenting coach, and with us we have
Courtney Doki, provisional psychologist and trauma specialist.
All right. So, as we always say, Duki's Institute is dedicated to empowering and bringing healing and restoration to Christian families and to the Christian community at large. And we're also psychotherapists, as we have always said, in our local private practice. So, you know that when we talk, we're going to be talking about everything related to social life, emotional life, psychological health, and just things that will help you to develop and maintain a healthy mental health well-being and also a healthy family life. And so today we have a wonderful special guest with you, and I believe you guys are going to enjoy her. Her name is Samia. And I'm Sanya. So, we have to put a little fun factor in there. Samia Bano. She is actually a happiness expert and an award-winning author of Make Change Fun and Easy: How to Create Inner Peace to World Peace in 3 Simple Steps. Using the principles she teaches, Samia has mastered the art of making change fun and easy, because sometimes we struggle with that, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And from her experience as well as her academic training, and as a survivor of child sexual abuse, Samia began her quest for inner peace and positive change when she was merely 8 years old. And after 20 years of struggle, Samia successfully eliminated suffering from her life and learned how to take control of her happiness. And now she's on a mission to help other individuals, whether you're a survivor of sexual abuse or just trying to seek happiness in your life. And my question is, who doesn't want to be happy?
That's probably one of the greatest need in the world today, where everybody is seeking to the formula. And today we have some ideas of what that might look like, but a lot of people are searching for the formula for what produces happiness. And today we have our special guest to talk about that.
So everybody help me welcome Samia Bano.
Hey, thank you. Thank you so much.
Yes, welcome so much. When we spoke, I was really impressed by what you do, and I'm very inspired by it because we, especially now what's going on in society, a lot of people are struggling with anxiety and fear, and the reality is that we are going to have challenges that that come to us. We are going to have challenges and crisis, but you're saying that we can find happiness even through the crisis situations. So, yes. Tell us a little bit about what made you reach a point of becoming a happiness expert.
It really tracks the journey of my life. As you were sharing earlier in my bio, I'm a survivor of child sexual abuse. And in the aftermath of experiencing that abuse, I experienced huge trauma, as you can imagine. I forgot how to smile. I lost all my friends because I found it so difficult to relate to other kids my age anymore. Everything that my peers were interested in, the things they talked about, the games they played, suddenly seemed so trivial and irrelevant to me that I could not relate to them anymore. And I could not even express to them what I did need and want. And so one of the impacts that also had on me was that I became a very silent child. I actually have been notorious in my family for talking nonstop for hours. But in the aftermath of experiencing the abuse, I actually became a very silent child. And consistently, all my teachers in my report cards, they would write, Samia is a very quiet and well behaved child.
Well behaved.
Yeah,
Yes.
I was perceived as well behaved because lived in a cultural context at that time when I was. My family was moving around. I had been living in India, and then we moved to the Middle East, and then we moved to Pakistan.
Mm-hmm.
And so, in the middle of all this moving, it's challenging enough. But when you're also trying to deal with trauma that
Yeah.
you didn't actually know how to deal with, things become even more difficult. And one of my defense mechanisms or coping strategies was to just go really inward. Like, I didn't want to create any more problems in my life because I didn't know how to deal with them. And so
Yes.
the best I could do was just withdraw within myself and hope everyone would ignore me and leave me alone because I just didn't know how to deal with the problems and challenges and the sense of suffering that I was experiencing.
Mm-hmm. So you're
Yeah.
saying that actually, I think you've touched on a lot of items here that or things here that we need to watch out for um,
Mhm.
when it comes to working with students or children, right? You mentioned that you were that quiet child, not as interested in the normal childhood things that every child is usually excited about. And you're saying that that also played a part in your academic
Medical.
journey as well. At what point did you come to realize that, because I'm assuming this is something that you were in a world on your own. There was, I'm assuming, no one knew and you were just going on, um, you were
Yes,
just journeying through this on your own. How, at what,
very much so.
yeah.
Yeah, I had a lot of like issues with shame and guilt and fear also, and even beyond that, not knowing, not being able to actually understand what had happened to me. And so I couldn't even really figure out how to verbalize what I
Yeah.
had experienced. So because of all of that, I wasn't able to tell anyone. The first person I actually ever told was a counselor, a psychologist at the
Mm-hmm.
counseling center in college.
Mm.
And um,
College, right?
yes,
College.
yes, I was in college at the time, and I had decided to become a psychology major. And the reason why
Mm-hmm.
I decided to become a psychology major was because I was actually at that time living in the United Arab Emirates, which is in the Middle East, and I
Mm-hmm.
was watching this soap opera, The Bold and the Beautiful,
Yes, I
American.
remember that one. Very common in Jamaica.
And in those days, there was a character in the soap. She was a therapist, a psychologist, and
Mm-hmm.
she said something in one episode about how her father used to be an abusive, alcoholic person, and
Mm-hmm.
as a result of that, growing up, she was really traumatized.
Mm-hmm.
And going into the field of psychology really helped her to better understand her father and figure out how to help herself. And I
Mm-hmm.
heard that and I was like, oh my gosh, I can do that. I can become a psychologist and then I'll figure out how to help myself. I didn't care about helping anyone else at that time. I just
Mm-hmm.
wanted to figure it out for myself. And so it got me interested in the idea of studying psychology and becoming a psychologist myself. And so the first opportunity I got, namely when I was in college, to choose that path for myself, I was like, this is it. This is it for me.
Sorry, just give me a second there. Apparently, we're having some technical difficulties in the
No.
background, and it's so unfortunate because this conversation that you're having is it's very insightful, and I'm enjoying it. But I don't know, somehow we disappeared from here.
No, but I can still hear you. That's the awesome
Okay,
thing.
there we go. All right, yay, we're back. So sorry about that.
No worries. I could hear you throughout the time.
Okay, yes. So so sorry about that. Um, so you mentioned that it wasn't until you went to college and you spoke to a psychologist, but you heard a story as you were watching The Bold and the Beautiful, and they were talking about their experience having an abusive parent, and it wasn't until they studied psychology then they were able to work through it. So that's where we stopped off. That's the last thing I heard you saying.
Yes, that's where I was. Yeah. Yeah, no, that's what got me interested in studying psychology. And really, it just sort of went on from there because the more I learned, not just psychology, but other things that I was studying in the
Mhm.
context of religion and spirituality and even social sciences, in terms of how to create social change in the world, you know, everything that I was learning to help myself was
Mhm.
also encouraging me to sort of stop being so focused on just myself because
Mm,
I was slowly realizing that, I can't be happy on my own in a bubble. I can't heal myself on my own in a bubble. And the more I connect with other people and help other people, the more it actually helps me help myself more. So, that became my motivation and my mission.
wow, that's powerful, Samia. Because I know for us, when we work with clients, that's one of the things we encourage them to do is to, even though they're struggling with the depression or the anxiety or whatever psychological concerns they're having, we always encourage them to try to reach out
Mhm.
to other people, and you know we can tell you, instances where that has actually helped individuals to overcome the depression or to work through the depression. So it's just amazing hearing you say that that was a bit of a turning point for you when you stopped being inward so much and you started
Yeah.
to practice outwardness.
Yes. I think one of the first people I practiced that with was my brother, actually. My brother has a genetic disorder because of which, he actually ended up in the wheelchair when he was around 17 years old, and he has never been able to walk or even stand since that time. And I thought, it, let me do what I can to help my brother. And
Mm,
in my attempts to help him, that is what helped me to sort of stop being so focused on just my own pain and suffering and start to
mm,
think about what is he going through. And my gosh, he may not have gone through what I went through in terms of being sexually abused, thank God, but
Mhm.
he was also dealing with massive challenges in his life as a person with disability.
Yeah.
And so it was my, like, I thank God for giving me my brother because he was my
Mhm.
starting point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's powerful when in our own challenges we can just own into that, but also in a way that's going to benefit someone else.
mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there is healing in trying to, that's almost a powerful place where trauma can heal as we seek to connect with
Yes.
others, because trauma tend to tell us to shut down and go into ourselves and beat ourselves up rather than reaching out. That's one of the things when we experience trauma, we tend to shut down.
Yeah,
And here you are making a conscious choice
yeah.
that you're not going to shut down, but you are going to deliberately reach out to others. And I think that's powerful in the
Mhm.
healing journey.
Yeah, that's the opposite of what our body and our brain wants us to do, right? We want to hide, we want to retreat because that's the way we feel we can survive the situation,
Yeah.
which trauma make you feel like you're constantly trying to survive a
That's right.
situation. And you're
That's
saying
right.
you reached out of that vulnerability, put
Mhm.
yourself out there, and that's where you started to find healing being possible. for
Right.
you?
And it took time to get there, you know. For
Mhm.
years, I couldn't focus on anyone else. I couldn't find the courage to look outside of myself.
Yeah.
But you know, I got to a point in the process of
Mhm.
healing and growth where I was able to do that. So
Mhm.
you may not be able to do that right now, but know that it's something you can do and begin to do. If you can even begin to imagine doing it, that may be the first step. And then the next step could be, I actually do it in some
Mhm.
small way, you know? Um,
I love that.
Yeah.
Imagine it first. It's like in interpersonal neurobiology, we talk about this. We talk about compassion, and a key aspect of compassion is what you're talking about. Is the imagination. Even imagine what I can do for myself, also imagine how I can help someone else. And that's the root of your compassion for both the self and the others. So I love that because we can
Yes.
see that from the perspective of neuroscience. When we start to
Mhm.
imagine things, it changes our lives.
Start to change your brain,
Yeah.
your
yeah.
pathways. Yeah. That's just amazing. And so you mentioned reaching out with reaching out despite of the turmoil or the impact that
Impact.
of trauma on you, reaching out. And if even if you can't do it right away, you just start imagining yourself doing
Mhm.
it. And we know that that has the capacity to change our neural pathways just by imagining ourselves
Okay.
reaching out and doing that. This is very refreshing because in the field of trauma and depression, just working on that, we're always inward in our work,
Mhm.
but you're introducing something different. I wouldn't say it's different, but you're introducing something that many people don't talk about as it relates to treatment and recovery and attaining happiness or level of contentment in life. You're
Mhm.
saying reach out, be there for other people.
Yes, you know, it's just both things are important. The inner
Yeah.
work is, of course, very important, and
Yes.
reaching outward is also very important. And it's
Yeah.
just that because for so long, being inward wasn't helping me, like it was just making
Mhm.
things worse.
Of course.
And so, if that's the case for you, then try a different strategy. You know,
Absolutely.
instead of continuing to stay inward focused, try a different strategy, try going outward, you know,
Mhm.
and then you can come back inward
Mhm.
after yeah.
Mhm.
Wow.
I love that. I love that. If inward is the strategies, inward strategies are not working as they need to be, or you've been trying them for so long, try to change things up a little bit
Yeah.
and reach out to people. I really love that. Before we move on to talking to parents and adults of influence, are there any other strategies that you could share with us on how we can overcome trauma and gain happiness in our life as an happiness expert? You know, what would be one thing that stand out to you that you say, yeah, we definitely need to try this?
Yeah. You know, I will just very quickly highlight two really major breakthroughs that I had, that actually, without those two breakthroughs, nothing, I don't think anything else would have been possible. And
Mhm.
the very first breakthrough that I had, I was around 14, maybe 15 years old. And I actually happened upon a magazine article that, for the very first time, I saw something talking about child abuse and what that was and how that could impact us. Prior to that, I never heard anyone talk to me about it. I never seen anything on TV, or I had no idea like what to even call what I had experienced. So it wasn't until I read that article and I could see myself in what
Yeah.
it was describing about what abuse is, what child sexual abuse can look like, and how it can impact you. Um, that triggered something like very strong in me, and it's like, oh, this is what happened to me.
Mhm.
And one of the strongest messages that that article contained was that it's not your fault. If you are a survivor, it's not your fault what happened. It doesn't matter what you did, what you said, what you were wearing or not wearing. It doesn't matter. Abuse is like, I mean, it's not your fault. No one asked for to be abused. No one asked to be raped. There's never an excuse or an invitation to abuse or rape. And so it's not your fault. And so that was like the first time that I started to, like, that got stuck in my head. I was like, it's not my fault. It's not my fault. It's not my fault.
Wow. Wow.
And that was like a huge breakthrough point because it helped me to transition out of denial and the fear and the just a sense of deep shame I'd been holding on to, and actually
Mhm.
shifted me into feeling intense anger. I was like, I was abused. This is so
Wow.
wrong. um, but the anger was a step up. It was the next
Yes,
step in the
it
healing
was a
process.
good step up.
So
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, so that was like one huge breakthrough for me. And then I would say like another huge breakthrough was like right around that time. Uh, I started to like become more interested in studying religion. Why? Because I happened to read The Diary of Annie Frank. It was the first biography that I ever read. Before that, I was a bookworm. I used to spend pretty much all my time reading, but I was reading like kid novels, young adult novels and stuff. And I don't know how, it was like the blessings of God, the guidance of God. He put The Diary of Annie Frank into my hand, and I read it. And even though, again, Annie went through a very different kind of trauma and experience than I did. But the fact that she was a real girl, and even despite all the difficulties that she went through, she found reasons to be happy and to be hopeful. And she actually talked about how her faith, um, helped her with some of that. It made me think, oh my gosh, well, what does my faith teach me? What does my religion teach me? And how can it help me help myself more? And so I actually started to learn more about Islam and really look at it from the perspective of how can it help me become more peaceful and heal myself. And and this mission, this sense of mission, that and understanding that there is a way to heal, and I can learn it. That was very important, like very hope giving.
So
Wow.
number one, it's not your fault. Number two, connect with your faith, and that's something that we can talk about all day, because
Yeah.
that's the center of Dr. Duki's dissertation, is how we can heal from psychological trauma or trauma and psychological disorders through faith practice, in the Christian community, biblical meditation. And it's just amazing that you're able to allude to that reaching at in that aspect of your life, it was able to help you as well from a faith perspective to heal from the trauma
Trauma.
experience.
Wow.
So we, yeah,
I love to hear that because, as Sana said, that's the work that I do. So when I
yeah,
hear someone saying, wow, I went through trauma
yeah,
and this played a crucial role, where you say you're sharing 2 points,
yeah,
and you say, one is this: I need to come to an
Yeah,
awareness. I need to recognize I am not the one at fault. It
yeah,
doesn't matter what I was wearing, what I was doing. It doesn't matter any of that. It's not my fault. But then you can move on to say, my faith plays a role. I discovered that my faith plays a role. That's just powerful.
yeah.
And I need to really echo that for both of them. But the first point, because a lot of people I work with, it takes a long while working with them for them to get to the place where they can recognize it's not your fault. And if you listen
yeah,
to us today, you're hearing from someone who
Yeah.
has been there with saying it's not your fault. And that's something powerful for us to take away from this, because a lot of people I work with who have been through sexual trauma or other trauma, especially sexual trauma, they tend to blame themselves. I was wearing this. I shouldn't have been at this place at this time, and if I wasn't there, it would not have happened to me. And that's the hardest hurdle I have found. Once people get across that hurdle, the work gets easier. And thank you for sharing that with us today, because I think people need to hear that.
Yeah. Yes. And for those who are listening, want to just welcome you for here and for tuning in. And if you have any questions or comments related to this, please feel free to comment below. Our guest Samia would be more than happy to share with you um, ways, other tips and strategies in which you can start working on your healing journey, or even to share with someone out there how they can start their healing journey. A big part of what I do is preventative work. And for me, I think it saves a lot in healthcare as it relates to mental health. So when it comes to child abuse, a lot of individuals go through the experience for years, right? And it's not until adulthood then they start talking about it. But what are some ways that adults or caregivers can, or influencers for children and youth, how can they tell that someone may have experienced it, and even if they didn't, but what are the things that they can look out for and use that as a way of inquiry or reaching out or getting resources for these children or these teenagers?
Yeah. Let me just address one or two really important red flags, as it were,
Mm-hmm.
before mentioning some steps around prevention. Um, I think one of the biggest red flags to watch out for is any kind of really drastic changes in behavior. So, as I mentioned, for example, in my case, I used to be a really talkative child, and then I became really silent. And this was something that everyone noticed in my family and among my friends. But for some reason, because they didn't have the education and the awareness and knowledge about issues of abuse and so forth, they couldn't connect the dots. Like, it didn't even occur to my parents to think, oh, could my child have gone through some trauma like abuse? Um, so any kind of really drastic changes, like your child used to talk a lot, but then they become silent, or they used to be maybe really quiet, but then they become hyperactive, or things like that. Any drastic changes, you need to like try and figure out, why did my child experience this drastic change in their behavior? It might not always be because they've been abused. There might be some other really big challenge they're dealing with in their life. But this is a major red flag. I think another big red flag when it comes to abuse issues is to like really honor your child, like watch them. If there's like a particular person or persons that they don't want to be around, that they don't like, for even if you don't know why they don't seem to like this person, like don't push them. I remember one of the most traumatic things for me was that the person who abused me was a member of my extended family. And I kept being told, Samia, you're being rude. Why don't you go and hug this person? Go wish and greet this person. Be nice to this person. Why are you being rude like this to them? And that was very, very triggering, and it triggered so many trust issues for me.
Yes.
Like, even in terms of being able to think about telling my parents, for example, I'm like, will they believe me? Because they're telling me, this person, I need to trust this person and behave well with this person and like this person and love this person. And I actually used to like and love that person.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
so it gets really confusing for a child. And so if you see any hesitation on the child part of your child to be friendly or associate with a particular person, especially if that's not their normal behavior, That's a
Mhm.
huge red flag.
Yeah. And another thing too with that is it forces the child or the teen to want to um, uh, invalidate their emotions or what their boundaries are telling them, because I'm supposed to go hug that person and talk to that person, but this is what they did to me, or this is what happened, which was really uncomfortable. But because
Yes,
my parents are telling me to do this and I'm being rude, then basically I need to invalidate what I've experienced, and we second
absolutely.
guess that. And so that's why we find sometimes in adulthood we sometimes can continue, our boundaries are getting crossed and we don't
Yes,
know, we can't tell the difference anymore because
yes,
we've lost touch with that aspect of ourselves. So yeah, thanks for sharing that for sure.
It's also re-traumatizing
Yeah, of
because every
course.
time you have to go hug that person, every time you have
Yeah.
to look at that person,
Yeah.
touch that person, it's a severe level of re-traumatization.
Yeah.
That, and now it becomes harder to learn, to focus. It becomes hard to do about anything
Hmm.
in life. And then if you see grades drop in and all these things,
Yeah.
what's going on with you? What are you doing? So the
Yeah.
child eventually get another layer of blame
Yes.
because they're not performing or doing what they're supposed to be
Yeah.
doing. And yeah, it's really, I'm hoping people are listening to this today because I
Hmm.
think this is profound. This
Yeah.
is
Yeah. I think we need to talk about this again. We need to have Sammy here talking about this again. So you had a third point to share, or I think you were going to share
uh,
what if we
oh,
find. Oh, go ahead.
no, I didn't. I was thinking of maybe sharing a preventive. Uh,
okay.
Yes.
so, honestly, the best, I mean, prevention is so much better than cure.
Yeah.
Yes.
And one of the best things you can do in terms of prevention is actually just educate yourself and your children about what is abuse, the different forms it can take, what it can look like, and the impact that it can have. And so that way, you can be more aware and on the alert. Like we teach our children about stranger danger, we teach our
Yeah.
children to stay safe from strangers. And that's why generally, uh, we manage to do a pretty good job of keeping them safe from strangers. But because if you're not educating yourself of the danger that your close, trusted family members or friends pose, you
Yes.
cannot protect yourself or your children from that. So
Yeah.
education about issues of abuse and the forms it can take, the impacts it can have, I think that's the one of the best things you can do for prevention.
Gotcha.
Yes, and we have a couple people joining us here. So one commented, "Yes, we have a great topic. Thank you." And there's a question for you, Samia: Is how do we deal with the abuser as an adult now? You know, we're no longer children, but how do we deal with them when we're adults?
Right. It depends on your situation and
Mhm.
it depends on where you are in your healing process. As I grew more and more empowered to sort of help myself, I just did everything I could to completely cut myself off from the person who had abused me. And luckily, in my case, thank God, I was able to do that pretty effectively because we moved countries. I literally, my
Right.
parents moved us to a different country. They didn't move because they knew I was abused. They were just moving because life circumstances called for them to move to a different place. But because of that, thankfully, I was able to create a huge physical distance between myself and this person. But then also, I just stopped talking to them. I just stopped no matter how much I was told I was being rude or this or that, I just refused to speak to them and, or even let them touch me anymore. For a while, this person made it like a game where
Mm.
he knew it freaked me out when they touched me, and I, would, just react like in ways that led people to be like, Samia, what's wrong with you? Why are you being so rude? But
Mhm.
I actually learned eventually, like, it wasn't a conscious decision, but like I just something snapped, and I
Mhm.
just stopped reacting to when this person touched me. I would just stare at them and give them the death stare.
Mm-hmm.
And that actually put a stop to them trying to touch me anymore, or trying to make a play or fun out of it, because it was the most infuriating thing where they would act like, oh, they're the best person and such a
Mhm.
loving person, and I'm the one who's like crazy and weird for acting, for acting the way that I was acting. But when again, it wasn't like a conscious strategy, but something
Mhm.
just snapped in me, and I just started giving them the silent treatment and just staring at them with all the hate I could muster.
Mm-hmm.
And that really put a stop to their
Yeah.
attempts to play with me. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was definitely a defense strategy that
Mhm.
thankfully that worked for you.
Yeah,
And
thankfully.
you
Yeah.
mentioned geographically you were able to separate from that person. Unfortunately, there are some individuals who are not able to do that geographically, right? And it's a struggle, and it's a very touchy topic as well.
Yeah, the other thing, I'm not sure if you have any suggestions or recommendations for someone who, even an adult, who
Yeah.
potentially they're not able to have that physical distance.
Yeah.
They're
Right.
within the same geographical location, same environment.
Yeah.
Do you have any tips or strategy you could recommend for that adult who
Yeah.
probably they live in the same community, actually probably not the same home or the same
Right.
community. They see this person all the time.
Right.
Do you have any strategy or techniques that
Yes.
that person could use?
Well, other than the silent treatment and the death stare that I started to give, because I was actually forced to live with this person literally in the same house for three
Mhm.
years
Wow.
um, at a certain point. So I couldn't physically distance during that time. And that's actually when, I started utilizing this death stare
Yes.
strategy, which
Yes.
worked. But beyond that, I think, um, a lot of times these people are just big bullies, and they're very, very concerned about maintaining their public image. And
Hmm.
so, like, I remember there were like instances where like I remember one day specifically, like I was sitting and some of my cousins were sitting with me, and they started questioning me, and they were like, Samia, what's wrong with you? Why do you act like this towards this person, who, like I said, was a member of our family? And and I couldn't like figure out how to express myself, and I said, you go ask him, he knows
Mm,
what he did, you know and I put it
Hmm.
on, and and it so happened that he was coming, and suddenly all my cousins turned to him, and they were like, what did you do? What did
wow.
you do to Sonia? And he was like, I don't know what you kids are talking about. Go do your homework. And he tried to totally like blow it off. But I could see it on his face in that moment. He got really scared.
Scared,
And
yes.
yes, because he had this, like, he never told anyone what he did either. And he was like putting on this act of being this amazing member of our family, right? And
Hmm.
so again, this was not a conscious strategy that I used, but it just happened in the moment, and it
Yes.
really worked for me. So I was like, you ask him what he did. He knows what he did, you know.
Yes.
Yeah,
Because it's definitely predatorial, as you mentioned. You
hmm,
mentioned being a big bully, but it's definitely predatorial. It's
yeah,
a power thing as well, and it's really good. Well, when they're going to be exposed, that's when the scare
yeah,
comes in, and yeah. But I always say expose them, right?
if you can, yeah,
if you can't do it on your own, talk to somebody who you trust, and
Right.
get help. There are
Yeah.
people out there who are willing to support you and
Yeah.
to help you get through that. So it can be a scary thing, especially if the person is an upstanding member of the community or the family. But
Exposing.
get help to do it if you feel you can't do it alone, and work on the healing process. And if this is if a child, if you hear a child come to you and say, for those who are listening, is be very supportive, right, to that
Yes.
child. Never
Yeah.
try to ask them, what did you do?
Hmm.
Never. That's the worst question you could possibly ask an individual who disclosed to you that they were sexually abused. Or so be very compassionate, take the time to listen, be very open, and try to get resources that can definitely help that child or that young person who have disclosed that situation. For you don't have to be sitting on doing therapy with that person.
Yeah.
They need somebody trained, and you have the power to help them to get that resource. So I think we definitely need to do a part two to this. What do you say? Yes.
I'm happy to come back whenever you want.
So, we have a few people joining us today. We're talking about childhood abuse, the impact of childhood abuse, and how we can overcome and gain happiness and contentment in our life. This is possible. There is hope for healing and restoration for you. And we have Samia Bano, who is here to say, I've been through it.
Yeah.
I've been through it, and I am an expert on helping people to gain happiness in their life now. So she has been through the journey. Guys, I just want you to check out her book. Samia, you have a book. Quickly, can you tell us about your book for those who are listening and would like to grab a copy of it?
Sure. So my book is Make Change Fun and Easy: How to Create Inner Peace to World Peace in 3 Simple Steps. And basically, in the book, I lay out the overall big picture framework for because basically the crux of how you can really make change fun and easy, and for that matter, take control of your mental, emotional well being and happiness and inner peace, is you need to learn to take control of how you think, feel, and act. And so
Mm.
there are beliefs that support that, there are actions that support that, there are ways of feeling that support that outcome, and there are ways of thinking and feeling and acting that don't support that. And so once you understand what does and doesn't support your ability to take control of your mental, emotional well being, of your ability to think, feel, and act and make change fun and easy, then that becomes like that's a necessary foundation for you to move forward. And that's what the book is about. It gives you all of that
Yeah.
foundational knowledge and information.
Wow. So it sounds like a few therapy sessions in a book.
Well, more like intro to
Intro.
what you can go through with the help of and
Yes.
support of your therapist, because
Yes.
it's not a journey, as we have been saying, that you want to go through alone, or that you can
Mhm.
even go through alone. You need help and support, so it just points the way.
Yes. Yes. So we're gonna put the link below in this video for those who are listening, and that sounds like an amazing book. I know in our work, that's definitely the philosophy that we use with our clients, and it works. That's what I use in my own head, and it works.
Yeah.
So we say go and go to the link and check out Samia's book. And guys, we just want to thank you for joining us. For those who joined us late today, please watch the replay. We had a little bit of a technical difficulty, but I think the voice was still going. So the story is still there. And so we just want to thank you for joining us, and thank you so much to our special guest, Samia Bano, for joining us, happiness expert and author. And until next time, we just want to wish you a wonderful week and a wonderful rest of the day. Take care, guys.